And now it's a real treat for me to introduce a very special guest, our first corporate franchisor. And if I recited all of his achievements, it would take the rest of our time. So here are just a few highlights. A native of Lexington, Kentucky, he graduated from the University of Kentucky and Kentucky Law School. With his partner, Jack Massey, he bought KFC from Colonel Sanders in 1964 when he was just 29. He led KFC to 7 years of incredible growth, from 600 restaurants to 3,500 restaurants in the United States and overseas. He sold KFC in 1971 and bought the Boston Celtics. Why not? In 1979, he ran a whirlwind campaign and was elected governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In addition, Harvard recognized Governor Brown as one of America's outstanding business leaders of the 20th century for helping build the fast food industry as we know it today. And most recently, he was recognized by Nation's Restaurant News with their most prestigious Pioneer of the Year award. Please help me welcome the Honorable John Y. Brown, Jr.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Lou. I love your enthusiasm. In the words of Ralph Waldo Emerson, nothing great is ever achieved without enthusiasm. I'm really honored to speak today. I sort of feel I'm back at home. The story of KFC and the Colonel, I think, is probably the greatest entrepreneurial story of the 20th century. When you think of a man that's close to retirement age and has a garage and a small restaurant, and he comes up with a pressure cooker of how to keep the grease out and the natural juices in, and fools around with spices and comes up with the famous 11 herbs and spices. Bold enough to put on a white suit and walk out and act like and look like a colonel. Get in his car with his wife and 10-year-old Cadillac, travel around the country and knock on the doors of restaurants, anyone that listened to him, and say, look, buddy, let me come in and cook you some chicken. If you like it, I'll give you a license. And over a period of years, he had some 600 licenses in restaurants all across this country. And today, you have to look and say, this man changed the eating habits of the world. This man is the best known person in the world. You put both Obamas, both Bushes, both Clintons, throw Oprah and Mandela, more people know the man in a white suit than all the rest of them combined. So what a founder. I'm sort of like the old maid that went to confession to confess her sin, and the priest asked her what sin she had to confess, and she said, Father, I've had an affair with a man. And he said, well, when did this happen? She says, 30 years ago. And he said, well, why do you come tell me about it now? She said, I just like to talk about it. So when it comes to KFC, I just like to talk about it. I mean, when it started, I was 28 years old, and the Colonel called me. I was on a TV political show, and he wanted to hire me right there. Be like the Colonel. He saw something, called up the station, and I'd met him before, and I didn't go see him. I didn't know what he's up to. It's a little bit strange, running on a white suit and had his mug on the side of his car. And finally, I stopped by and took me upstairs and went through the files of these licensees and where he's getting $100 a month and $150, $180, $200, some of them $300 a month. And then he took me some to one of his restaurants, and I had his chicken, and I said, I'm gonna have a seat here. I've never seen such a beautiful potential business. And one thing led to another, and I met a banker, entrepreneur that retired to play, and he couldn't find anybody to play with, Jack Massey. We became partners, and he was a great partner, and we bought the Colonel out after we went to Salt Lake, and Pete Harmon approved us. And it was a great ride, an unbelievable ride. I'd like to share it with you. Hopefully there's something to be learned. We started, there were 17 employees. And the first thing we did was to get the Colonel on television. The first show, a friend of mine, Paul Horning, that played for Green Bay Packers, knew somebody that knew somebody, and got him on What's My Line, and they didn't know who he was, but he was a great showman. Then we had him on Missing Links, I've Got a Secret. Finally got him on Johnny Carson, where he pushed the whole $2 million in cash out in a plastic cage with guards there pushing it out. He was a great showman. Once in a lawsuit, he was a witness, and the opposing counsel said, Colonel, would you tell the jury what war you fought in? And he said, well, I didn't fight in any war. He said, well, you explain to the jury what the meaning of that colonel that you used before your name and what it means. He said, well, it means about the same thing that honorable means before your name. It doesn't mean a damn thing. So once we got him on the air, franchisee sales jumped 10%. Every time we had a national TV show, sales jumped. And everyone got excited. And the franchisees all of a sudden realized what an important asset they had in the chicken. And they became passionate with it. And some of these restaurants were doing 30, even 40% in sales. So we said, well, let's try take home. Let's just try carry out just with chicken. And we take some closed down service stations and put the bucket up and signs out, and one thing led to another. And finally, a franchisee out of Memphis, Ellis Hartzall, came in and gave us an image with the cupola roof and the red and white, and we had our image. And from there, we went into real promotion and marketing through a national co-op. It was the first one in the restaurant industry where we got all the franchisees to cooperate together, and then we matched their funding. It started at $25 a month and then $50 and $100. And I know it's gone up quite a bit since then, but that was the key to really dominating the market. We made all members at that time charter members and gave them a special 2% contract, and they were our partners. And partners they were. The one person I listened to about this concept more than anyone else was Colonel Sanders. He knew his concept. He had a passion for it, and you dare not change it. He had everyone in the franchise family not only in love with him, but fearful of him. When he'd walk into a convention like this, it'd feel like everybody's walking on there. It'd feel like the second coming. I mean, he really had that kind of emotional attachment because it was almost like we were just part of a special wing of association. Our approach to management was, someone said, I think was introduced, about the KISS process. Just keep it simple. And we did. We took the best of what the Colonel had and we put it in the carry-out. Ultimately, we put in crispy, and that was our concept, and it worked. After about 3 years, we figured I didn't know how to run a company. I was a young fellow out of law school and sold Encyclopedia Britannica, and I needed to go to Harvard Business School to learn how to run a company. I'd never read a balance sheet or P&L. True story. So I went to Harvard and had lunch with about 11 associate professors. And I got telling the story about, how we had chicken take-homes and put chicken in a bucket, box, cash, franchise business. And I thought you had to be some kind of genius to run IBM or General Motors. And after about 20 minutes, one of them asked me, said, Mr. Brown, how are your sales? And I said, well, we've gone from about 3 million to a little over 100 million this year. I didn't know if maybe everybody did that. And one of the professors frowned and said, well, what about your profits? Thinking I must be in trouble, I wouldn't be there. I said, well, we've gone from about 300,000 to a little over 10 million pre-tax. And the host smiled and said, Mr. Brown, you just go on back and y'all keep doing whatever you're doing. Don't let us confuse you. And, you all have learned all about experts, haven't you? Well, in 1967, we went public, and it was the hottest stock on Wall Street. We went from 15 to a little over 300. It was exciting times. We took the Colonel down on the floor, only third person ever. JFK and LBJ were the only ones ever been on the floor before the Colonel was allowed. And that year afterwards, we bought 600 franchise stores, and part of the deal was the franchise owner had to come in and help me manage. So our entire management team, I want you to know, were franchisees. And the next year, they knew a lot more about this business than I did. I never did get in the kitchen and cook up a lot of chicken. I was smart enough to use people smarter than I was. But the next year, we built 864 take-homes, if you can believe that. And before we sold out, we had 3,500 stores. A funny story of how we operated, to keep it simple. Lloyd Weston worked for IBM. He wanted to go to Japan. And so a company called Mitsubishi had contact come by the company, and I sat down about 30 minutes. I didn't know who they were, but I didn't know they were the second largest company in the world. conglomerate, and so we did a deal. You had to have a partner in Japan. So I called Loy over. I made a deal with him. I gave him $40,000 a year, gave him $100,000, pots and pans. I said, Loy, go over and build one. If it works, build two. 8 years later, as a governor, I go over on an economic tour, and Lloyd meets me with a big bus of employees, and all excited, and they had 800 stores. And that just shows you how we took a simple idea and actually dominated the market. I know it hurts your feelings, but Popeyes and Church's and Bojangles all had to go bankrupt. And we were bigger than McDonald's, so we had our day. And at the end of it, I called all my millionaires. I had 19 millionaires reporting to work, most of them franchisees. And I explained to them on the front page of the paper that day that Richard Nixon was only worth $240,000, and he had been vice president for 8 years and president. That's quite an honor to be a millionaire. And I want you to know there's only two reasons that we're all millionaires. And that is the Colonel looks great and his chicken tastes great. No other reason. So go back to work. Well, I couldn't get him to work. So finally we had to sell out. But it was a great run. As Victor Hugo once wrote, nothing is so powerful as an idea whose time has come. Now the industry today is quite different. Today you have to give the customer what they want. It's a changing industry. Many of the companies have to reinvent themselves. You look at McDonald's, it took them maybe 50 years to really have good food, and they basically went out and found out what everybody else is buying, whether it's from Hardee's or whether the Starbucks coffee or the health drinks, and they're giving the customers what they want. There's two ways to look at the future. And first, you might look at it as a pessimist, because these are hard times, they're difficult times. And the question is, how do you come out of them? The pessimist would look at, well, the economy's bad. Bone-off chicken, we've lost 50% of our market. Higher sales, higher costs, rather, lower margins, healthcare costs, minimum wage, all the problems. Well, I'm an optimist, you know. Optimist looks at difficulty and every opportunity. I mean, a pessimist does. An optimist looks at the opportunity and every difficulty. Now, the optimist and the good news is that the KFC owns a bone-in chicken. The off-bone chicken only offers a larger market. Competitors have the same cost problems. People still eat 3 times a day. Somebody got to sell it to them. So because we're having problems than our competitors, we just have to do it better than they do. Chicken is the fastest growing product in the restaurant industry. It's better, healthier for you, more adaptable to so many ways to use it, and it's cheaper. 40% of all protein in the restaurant business is chicken. So you're fortunate to be in the right category. A famous saying from the former chairman of AIG, when he said all he looks for is an unfair advantage in business. And KFC does have an unfair advantage. KFC is the king of chicken. You're 5 times larger than any chicken company in the world. Your marketing budget is 4 times larger than any of your competition here in the States. The Colonel is the greatest brand. He's the original deal. He is the flavor. He is the heart and the soul of this company. Certainly a lot better than a cow. And remember, you're supposed to laugh about that. And for most of the last 40 years, the original recipe has been voted the #1 quality product in the entire restaurant industry. So something that you should be very proud of. So remember 2 things, that KFC is a family, and you build your future together with corporate that's very entrepreneurial and very competitive. I was over there in China. Sam Su came over and met me. I was so impressed. Very aggressive company. But you want an aggressive company. You want a winning company. You want a company that knows how to win. And I say to David Novak and John Krasinski that remember that this is our hometown franchisees. You all are the founders. And I just ask and challenge them to get in here and figure out what is the best course to where you make money and where you build the KFC in a highly competitive market. And I'm confident you can. Andy Grove, a famous founder of Intel, said companies don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because they don't commit. The future and the opportunities are yours. There's no excuse not to be the very best. You got to believe in KFC and you got to believe in America. You know, so much negativism goes on, and I don't believe in negativism. I haven't celebrated a birthday since I was 50. I don't want to hear anything about that. But in this country, every decade we've had a crisis. In the 20s, we had World War I. In the 30s, we had the Great Depression, 40% unemployment. In the 40s, we had World War II and the atomic bomb. In the 50s, we had the Korean War and finished the decade with 91% tax rates. In the 60s, we lost our beloved president through assassination, as well as Martin Luther King in the beginning of the Vietnam War. In the 70s, we had the resignation in a scandal of our President of the United States and finished the decade with 22% interest, 20% inflation, 11% unemployment. In the 90s, we had the savings and loan scandal and banking disarray. In the last decade, we had a couple of wars and had 9/11. And so, every decade we've had problems, we've had crises, but America is the most optimistic country. We're a country of survivors. We like what we have. We're going to keep what we've got. Right today, we're 3 times have more assets and natural resources than any other nation in the world. We are the center for business development. We are the entrepreneurial center. With the internet, we have a level playing field, which opens up more markets all over the world, markets here at home where we can communicate and market much less expensive. Our reach is further than ever, so our opportunity is greater. And I believe in Warren Buffett when he says that the opportunity of America is greater than it's ever been for the future. So I believe in America, and I would say to you, believe in KFC and believe in America, and the future is yours. I'd like to finish with a great Kentuckian, which he says it best, because if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. And his quote was, "Impossible is nothing." Impossible is just a big word thrown around by small minds who find it easier to live in the world they've been given than explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. Impossible is not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential. Impossible is temporary. Impossible is nothing. So if the Colonel was here tonight, he'd say, get in your kitchen, you do chicken right, and the future is yours. So on behalf of the Colonel and the old KFC family, God bless KFC and God bless America, and good luck.
Wow, what an amazing story from an amazing man. How's that for leadership for breakthrough results, too? Wow. One more applause, a round of applause for Governor Brown, please. Let's do it.